All right. Welcome, Textilers, to another weekend of our event. Okay, so last week we went through, this same training, and last week we talked about the core components. Okay, um, we went through the different Azure database services where we talked about Cosmos DB, Azure SQL database, the Azure database for MySQL, for PostgreSQL. We talked about SQL Managed Instance. We talked about, we explored Marketplace. Then we did hands-on lab where we created two VMs for them to have connection. But if you observed, last week while we were doing the lab, we did not establish connection. I don't know if any of us noticed that. And I did go ahead to drop a note that is there anyone that can identify the blocker as to which why we could not establish connection between two VMs. Okay, but I'm still yet to see answers. I thought, you're going to all drop the answers in our channel because that's the idea for us to see if from the learning we are able to identify problems or issues and we can give solution to that. But I didn't see any response. Okay, but don't worry, we are going to look at that again today before we move into the training proper. If you're joining us for the first time, my name is Oluwatosi Anishere. Microsoft certified trainer as well as a consultant for textilers. I'm a mentor. I specialize in Microsoft 365 and Azure, and currently I am your instructor for the Azure class. Okay, so our house rules remains the same, and if you're joining us for the first time, please let's use the raise your hand icon if we are meaning to ask a question or make contribution. That way, it helps us to be more organized, and always mute your mic as soon as you join the meeting. Okay, if you need to ask question, it's okay. I'm giving you the permission to unmute such that you can call my attention because sometimes they raise your hand. That's in case I do not see you raise your hand on time. It's okay. Please go ahead and mute your mic and call my attention. Also, you could use the chat window. That is the meeting chat. You can drop your comments. You can drop your questions or anything that you would like to share with us in the meeting chat. So those are house rules. And our class remains 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. every weekend. And we are sure we don't exceed that timing. All right, here we'll be moving on to module 5. But like I said, I mentioned earlier that we're going to review the last exercise that we did. I think someone's hand is up. Please go ahead, okay?
Hello,
Hello,
good morning.
good morning, okay?
Okay, I think a couple of trainings ago, I asked if it's possible to have a WhatsApp group for this, or just specific to this Azure. You said you get back to me. And then secondly, you just said that you dropped a message in Teams that about the connectivity of the last lab.
Yes.
I've looked through the entire thread and I can't see any such message. Or does that mean I'm looking at the wrong thing, or where exactly was it posted? Because I'm
Okay.
looking through the thread of last week's meeting. Last week was 16th of October, and I
Yes.
can see
Can you see my screen?
your screen. Yes, I can see
Okay.
your screen.
I'm sharing the Teams right now. So these are all the channels that we have for our learning. And right now we are within the Microsoft Azure because that's our learning space. Power Platform, Artificial Intelligence, Power Automate, Power BI, Office 365 and Teams, those are not our own channel for learning. Our major channel for learning is where you have cloud computing, Microsoft Azure. And if you see the mail thread, see what I wrote here. Hello guys, I would like to give us a teaser based on the lab we did in class. In the lab, we created two VMs to establish connection, and at the end of our lab, we could not establish connection. We got the message of response timeout. Now, there's a reason for that, and this is because there's a blocker preventing us from establishing the connection. So here's the task. The essence is for you to do a research and find out what the blocker was, and we can talk about it in the next training. Probably you missed this thread.
It's funny, but I can't see it at my end. Maybe I guess maybe okay. Well, let me know. It might be a problem from my end. I can't see that thread,
Okay,
but I can see the other
sometimes,
message. I can see the so maybe it's the way
okay,
it displays on my computer.
sometimes
So
you
it might
have
be a problem
to,
with my computer.
no, may not be an issue. You may just have to publish collapse and you have to just click on see previous replies so that it expands, the chat. Okay, let me go ahead to collapse this. Now, once you collapse, you won't see anything, right? Johnston. So sometimes you have to just go to where you see maybe replies or response to expand, the thread, and you will see the chat. So possibly that could be the issue. Possibly. So whenever you go, just look out for any collapse chat and expand it. You will see all the hidden chats that we may have within the channel. Okay,
Okay,
so
let me not hold us back. I have to let me might be because I'm using a MacBook, so I don't know. Maybe it operates differently. I'm seeing something different. I can see the thread. I can see other messages, but I can't see that specific one.
oh,
I can
okay.
see I can see that specific one. But
All right,
how
like you
about
rightly said, maybe
having a
after the
having a
class,
WhatsApp?
you could wait behind and we could look at your system together after the class. So that way we don't hold the class back. Is that fine?
Okay, fine, fine.
All right. For the WhatsApp group, I haven't gotten a go ahead yet for that. I understand that trying to create that for the purpose of learning and all, but I think same thing is what you can achieve within the Microsoft Teams. But I would do a follow up to get a go ahead, and I will share the update with us.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
Thank you. Okay, so let's bring up my workspace. That's the Azure. Now, how do we get here? I'm sure by now this is something we can all do on our own. Going to the browser and type in the portal.azure.com. Now, once you get to the portal.azure.com, it will always navigate you to the Azure portal. But don't forget, you have to include your credentials, which means provide your username and password. Then you will be able to access the Azure portal if you've signed up for that. Now, we want to go to our VMs that we created. So last week we created different VMs, and I named some of them VM2, VM4, ordinary textiles VM, and so on. So now for VM2, let's go ahead to expand that. It takes us to the VM2 page. Now you would notice something. It's status is top and deallocated. And the reason for this is because while we created the VM last week, we put a management policy in place to automatically shut down at a particular time. So whether you stop the VM manually yourself, regardless of you doing that, if you forget, it will still automatically shut down and deallocate. So for us to be able to gain access to this VM, the ideal thing is to go ahead to start. So we can start this VM, and I think I would duplicate this page so that we can equally start VM4 as well. Okay, so I'll navigate to VM4 too, so that I can start VM4 as well. Don't forget, we're trying to establish connection between VM2 and VM4. So I'm going to redo that connection again so that you will still see the same error and we can talk about the blocker together. Okay, so usually when you start the VM, it's going to let you see the notification that it has either started, and once it started, the status changed to running. That's how you would know that this, you know, VM is up and running. You see the status telling us running. So let's go ahead to connect to the VM, either VM2 or VM4, regardless. You see this is still saying starting. Let me refresh. As the VM2, and of course we now have the VM running. We'll go ahead to connect using RDP. So download the RDP file. Now you may be wondering, is it every time we try to connect that we have to download? I would say yes. You have to, download this RDP file to connect, or you can navigate through the already downloaded file to connect. Either way, you will be able to connect. So right now I need to provide my username and password. So my username, I'll go ahead to the same name while we were configuring this VM environment. I said, if you don't mind, just for test purpose, go ahead to maintain the same VM name as your username. That way you don't have to forget. And of course, password. Provide your password, and we can connect. So you would always see the status. It's not an error. It's just letting us know that certificate is not connected to this. But just go ahead to click yes, and we can have a VM open to us. So here we go. A VM. Okay, so like I said, we created this VM last week, and we tried to test connection. And for us to test connection, remember I said we need to use the PowerShell. We're using the PowerShell last week. So again, I'll just go ahead to type PowerShell. Okay. And let me always run your PowerShell as administrator, please. I'll minimize the server manager so that we can just have the PowerShell page. Now, for this, what we're trying to do last week was to connect to, so this is our VM, let me see, VM2. So we're trying to connect to our VM4. So we're supposed to just do ping, sorry, ping, the name of the VM, that's tech stylers. This time around is for VM. Okay, and this was exactly what we experienced last week. Request timeout. Now this request timeout simply means there was no connection. Now let's do the same for this is VM2, right? Let's do the same for VM4. So I'll come back here, navigate to connect to our VM4. Same process. I'm going to open, connecting to VM4. So our VM name is the same username that we have. Stylers. Password. So the beauty of these different VM is you can open more than one VM at the same time. Okay, so this is our VM4. So let me try to connect from VM4 to VM2. Let's equally see if we will be able to connect as well. But trust me, it's going to be request timeout because of that blocker that I mentioned. So let me look for PowerShell. Remember to always run the PowerShell as an administrator. Okay, so we can ping textilers for VM. Okay. Here. Okay, there's a reply here. Now let me go ahead to tell us the what the issue is. Now the reason why we're having request timeout is basically because of our firewall. So we need to turn off firewall because that is just a major uh, blocker. So I can go ahead the defender firewall from control panel, or you could just simply use the search button. So let me click on that. You will see that the defender firewall is on. So what we're expected to do is to turn it off. So it's the firewall that is blocking, this what's it called, the connection, so to say. So let's go ahead to turn off. Okay, now that is turned off, we can now test connection. Now let's see that of VM4 as well. This is VM2, right? I'll minimize and go to VM4. So I'll equally check the firewall defender for VM4. Please, if your mic is on, kindly mute your mic. Okay, so we can turn off. All right, so now let's repeat the process. This time around, we'll do ping. Okay, it doesn't really matter though that I'm on cap lock. Textilers to VM. Okay, now there's a response. It's no longer timing out. Okay, and that's the blocker that I was telling us about. Is there a way you could identify the blocker? So obviously it was the firewall that we had on the machine, that is on this particular VM. That's why I went through, the what's it called, defender's firewall for this system to turn it off, and that way one will be able to establish connection. So that's just the blocker for this issue. Okay, so and in here, now the reason why this there was a response here is this is actually Textiler's 4 VM, and I'm pinging the same VM. That was why when the blocker was on, I was still able to get response. Okay. The idea is if you're pinging another, VM, of course, it will tell you timeout. Now that I've turned it off, let's go ahead to ping the Textiles 2 VM. That's another VM entirely. Textiles 2 VM. And of course, you get the reply, which means you are able to establish the connection. And that was the only reason why we couldn't last time, because the Defender firewall was on. So that's just a revision of what we did last week, and also to understand the reason why we couldn't establish connection. Okay, so let's move on with today's event proper. In this module, we are going to be looking at the Azure security features as well as the Azure network security. So basically, we'll have more focus, or we will be focusing on security, okay, for this particular learning. And we'll start with the security tools and features within Azure, just to understand, have an overview, and get an idea on how this works. And the objective here is, at the end of the day, we should be able to describe the features and functionality of these tools, starting with the Azure Security Center that includes its policy compliance, the security alert. There's something called secure score, resource hygiene. We'll talk about the Azure Sentinel, Key Vault, and Azure dedicated host. Don't forget, we may not do, deep dive on this thing, but we'll mention it and help you to understand what these tools are. So we'll start with the Azure Security Center. No, we all know, based on the time and the shift, there's this, ever changing when it comes to our data on the cloud. There's usually like a security issue, and our cyber criminals can look for every means or every ways to compromise our security perimeter. The essence of that is just to steal, our data, or should I say, steal our resources. Now, that is the essence of the Azure Security Center, because we can use this tool. Basically will give us that infrastructure level of security management, just to help us protect our data. And the tool that is the Azure Security Center, I'm saying it because it's a tool. It provides us with this threat protection, or should I say advanced threat protection. Now, not just for our cloud environment, also extending to our on-premises infrastructure. So in a situation whereby we have hybrid workload, I'm sure we know what hybrid is right now, that combination of on-premises and cloud, or should I say, the coexistence of on-premises and cloud. Now, um, whether we have this kind of hybrid workload, it doesn't matter. It will help protect, both infrastructure, both workload, that of on-premises and cloud. So it is not restricted to just the cloud because it's called Azure Security Center. No. And of course, this Azure Security Center also provide us with other tools that we can use to add in our network and secure our services, because the idea of this tool is based on security. Now, what are those challenges that we have that Azure Security Center, you know, covers? Usually, we always, as organization, there's usually rapid change with workload, and this is because employees within our organization, or should I say users, they kind to do more. So there's always challenges with that change of services within our environment. So with the Azure Security Center, it's been created to meet our security standard, whereby it provides us with best practices, that we can follow. It recommends us best practices to help secure our environment. And another thing is, the cyber criminals, or should I say, attackers, they are always looking for means. There's always one sophisticated attack or the other that keeps coming up, despite you trying to mitigate security posture, despite you trying to add in your security environment. The attackers would always look for more means, to be able to get through your environment. And regardless of where your work is situated, whether it's on premises or the cloud, the your workload most of the time, you know, it's internet facing, because when it comes to cloud, the idea is you always access your workload via the internet. So for that reason, because it's public internet facing, usually it tends to be vulnerable. I mean, your environment tends to be vulnerable. However, our Azure Security Center, helps to protect, our environment or our workload or our data as against such threats. Then another thing that this particular security center addresses is security skills in case we don't have enough employees in our environment that have that skills when it comes to security, maybe in terms of uh, working with this environment with the Azure Security Center. It does that. So, in essence, or if there's any take home we have here, the idea of the security center is to help protect against these different scenarios that I've given to us. There, those scenario are challenges basically. So the security center now provides the tools that helps us to, strengthen the security posture, protecting all our data or resources against threat, and that way we have this it secures it much more faster, and that's why you can see here, our Azure Security will give you that recommendation. That's the best practices I mentioned to us that we can follow. Immediately it detects if there's any malware or threats in your environment, and it blocks out the malware, automatically. It helps us to identify any potential threats that you may have, and of course you have this just-in-time access to control your different ports for security. So these are the things the Azure Security Center done. We are not limited to this. Of course, there are other things in terms of continuous assessment or strengthening the security posture. These are the things that our Azure Security does. Now, what are the capabilities? Now, for Azure Security capabilities, we have, what is listed here on the screen. They are part of the Azure Security capabilities. So first, you have the policy compliance. Now, this policy compliance is part of the Azure capability because you'll be able to run policies across the different group, from management group to subscription down to resources in your tenant. Then the continuous assessments that I earlier mentioned, these are also no part of its capability. So for instance, with regards to continuous assessment, you will be it's going the how will I put it, this security center brings continuous assessment for your entire estate, such that it does the work of discovering and reporting. Okay, whether it's in new resources or an existing resources that you have, it's going to do some form of reporting. And you'll be able to get maybe a list of recommendation of what you need to do in order to fix issues within your environment and maintain protection within your environment. That's the idea of this continuous assessment. Then we have the tailored recommendation in terms of best practices on how the things you should do, giving us idea of, okay, do this to help secure your environment better, or do this or configure this or deploy this. It will bring such recommendation to us. That way we are able to get secure faster. Okay, because through the recommendation that is being posed and all of it, you're able to have this, security work, faster, or you're able to get secure faster your environment. Then threat protection, obviously. Azure Security Center, this is one of the capabilities. I'm sure I've mentioned it earlier. Now, within the Azure Security Center, it can that's its work. It will detect, it will prevent any threat within your infrastructure, whether it's the infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, regardless of what kind of service offering that you're using, it does that work. And the reason for that is our Azure Security Center is actually integrated with Microsoft Defender, which I don't think we're going to be talking about that here, but there's a tool which we call Azure Defender. It's actually within our Azure Security Center. It protects the pass as well. When it comes to brute force attack, now it reduces that. And the idea of brute force attack is trying different password on the same user. So let's assume you're trying to access my account. You don't know my password, but you will try different password as against my attack. That's what we call brute force. Another name for that brute force is dictionary attack. Okay, trying different passwords. Usually it's the attackers that does this. They have maybe app or tool, that just tries to use different passwords as a game just to guess your password. And it usually work for users in an organization that uses weak password. And that's why Microsoft will always recommend that you use, you don't use easy password, too simple password, and no, you have, policy in place that helps you to use complex password, whether alphanumeric symbol and all of those, just to harden the security within your environment. So that's the idea of brute force, and of course, it helps protect against such incident. It also protect our data within our environment across the Azure SQL. Let's just take that's the escrow server, storage services, all of those things that we have within our environment. So these are the capabilities, and the tool is really rich when it comes to security. Now, another thing we have here is the Azure Sentinel. Now, Azure Sentinel is another tool, and of course, the Azure Sentinel here, it's basically the combination of security information management, which we refer to as CM, and that of the security automated response, which we refer to as SOA. So basically, those are the two. The idea of Azure Sentinel is it's actually a scalable cloud native of this CM and SOA. Independently, we have CM itself, which we refer to as CM as a service. And of course, it brings the power of this cloud as well as artificial intelligence just to help security operation team. Now, rather than having this, CM on its own is more or less a tool, SOA is more or less a tool. Now, integrating both is what gives birth to this tool we now refer to as Azure Sentinel. Okay, so it's rich, and it helps when you think of Azure Sentinel. It actually helps with, it's a solution on its own. Okay, it delivers to us the intelligence, security analytics, as well as threat intelligence across our enterprise, across our environment. The idea is giving us a single solution, because CM on its own is a solution. Okay, SUA on its own independently is a solution. Now, integrating both, like bringing both together to form just one solution, such that it provides us that single solution for alert detection, for threat visibility, doing proactive hunting and threat response. That's the idea of this Azure Sentinel, and it does all of this: collect, detect, investigate, and response. In fact, I think if you don't mind, let me play us a short video that would help us get more idea of this Azure Sentinel, so you understand better what I'm talking about with visuals. Okay, rather than Tosin just talking, we can also get visuals of this Azure Sentinel environment. So permit me to bring up that video quickly. It's a short video, and we can move on. Let me know once you are able to see the video as well as hear um, this video. So 1 minute. Let me bring that up. I'll share the link with us as well in case we want to have a reference to that. 1 minute, please. Please, are you able to hear?
We take a look at Microsoft Azure Sentinel, our new cloud-native SIEM service with built-in AI for analytics that removes the constant.
Please, are you able to hear?
Yes, we can hear.
That the volume is low.
Okay, I paused the video. I just wanted to be sure we can hear.
Complexity of achieving the central and focused near real-time view of the active threat in your environment. And just like any other service in Azure, the service scales automatically to your needs. Azure Sentinel works by correlating the security logs and signals from all sources across your apps, services, infrastructure, networks, and users, whether they reside on premises, in Azure, or any other cloud. Our built-in AI leverages Microsoft Threat Intelligence that analyzes trillions of signals every day. In our machine learning models, we find
Hello, do you pause it?
experience, filter through the noise from alerts, and drilling into and analyzing thousands of anomalous events.
Okay, someone said the volume is very low. Okay, let me reshare my screen. Let me reshare. Possibly, that would be much more better. One minute, I'm trying to share to ensure I include the audio. Okay, and such that you're able to hear as well.
Our new cloud
Okay, how about now?
With built-in AI for analytics, it removes the constant complexity of achieving the central and focused near real-time view of the active.
Yeah, yes, it's fine.
Just like any other service in Azure, the service scales automatically to your needs.
Hello, Justin.
Works by correlating
Yes?
the security logs and signals
It's fine.
from all sources across your apps, services, infrastructure, networks, and users, whether they reside on premises, in Azure, or any other cloud. Our built-in AI leverages Microsoft Threat Intelligence that analyzes trillions of signals every day. And our machine learning models, refined through decades of security experience, filter through the noise from alerts, drilling into and analyzing thousands of anomalous events to return a view of threats that really require your attention. For example, here in the overview dashboard, we give you bird's eye perspective of the events going on in your environment. You can see how many events were collected, active cases and their status, as well as trends across events and cases. We also leverage built-in AI capabilities in Azure to detect anomalies in events from different sources. And by leveraging signals from Microsoft Threat Intelligence, Azure Sentinel identifies attacks based on your data and places them on a map so you can analyze malicious traffic. To get to Azure Sentinel, just search for it in the Azure portal. One tip here, to store your activity logs, you'll need to use an existing workspace or create a new one to get going. Then, to get started, you'll first need to connect your security sources. In the data collection page, we have a number of connectors for Microsoft solutions available out of the box, including Microsoft Threat Protection Solutions. And we're working with a broader security ecosystem to create built-in connectors for non-Microsoft solutions. Of course, you can use common event format, syslog, or REST API to connect your data sources with Azure Sentinel as well. For example, here I want to connect Azure Active Directory. I can use the connector, and in just a few clicks, I can get sign-in and audit logs directly from Azure AD. You can additionally choose from a gallery of expertly created dashboards that surface insights based on your data. These dashboards can be easily customized to your needs as well. Now, Azure Sentinel leverages the proven foundation of Azure Monitor, with more than 10 petabytes of log data ingested daily. As a security analyst, once your data sources are connected, you can start analyzing your data with a rich query language that enables you to create advanced and complex queries in just a few lines. Let's run a simple query to monitor my firewall trends week over week. Once it returns the results, I can easily visualize them by selecting a chart type. And now I can see a week-over-week trend of my firewall logs. I can also leverage built-in analytics and machine learning in Azure to detect anomalies. Here I'm analyzing the amount of sign-in logs in the last 24 hours. The arrow on the chart points to anomalies found by the service. Let's click on it to learn more. We can see that the machine learning algorithm found a pattern that correlates with the spike we have seen and generated a query automatically to decipher why this point in time was different compared to normal patterns, all without me having to write a complex query. Now, another area that you may spend a lot of your time is in our cases page, which you can see here. Think of a case as a container filled with alerts and entities on a specific threat in your organization. A case is generated by an alert, and these can come from several sources, such as security solutions that you have connected to Azure Sentinel, correlation rules that you may have set up to detect specific activities, or anomalies flagged by our machine learning models. You can also manage the full life cycle of the case and its associated alerts. You can assign cases to an individual or a group on your team with the expertise to investigate these alerts. You can update the status of the alert, and you can also change the severity based on your findings. Next, you can use the investigation tool that helps you understand the scope and identify the root cause of a potential security threat. In the graph, we can see a user and a host related to this alert. Now, you can select an entity and ask Azure Sentinel to analyze the data to find additional insights and connections on the entities extracted from these alerts. In this example, I will ask Azure Sentinel to show me all the related alerts to this specific user. Once it gets the results, I can see all the connections between the entities associated with this specific user. I can also ask Azure Sentinel to get me all the top 5 hosts that this specific user logged into in the last 24 hours. You can see that the graph really helps me to understand the scope of the attack. Beyond investigation, you can also build and run security playbooks to automate security operations against a given alert. Azure Sentinel is natively integrated with the Azure portal, which allows you to take advantage of built-in services. Playbooks can be triggered on demand for a given alert by selecting the Run button. Or you can configure real-time automation while authoring a correlation rule by selecting which playbook should run automatically when alert is being fired. Playbooks are simple to create in the Logic Apps Designer, and there are no developer skills required. I've already created one that you can see here, which creates an incident in our ticketing system, which in this case happens to be ServiceNow. It will then post a message to the SOC channel in Microsoft Teams, generate and send an approval email that gives an elected person the ability to decide using interactive buttons for the appropriate action. In this case, if the user approves, the playbook will block the user in Azure AD and add a rule to my firewall that blocks this malicious IP. Users are entities you need to monitor closely. Therefore, Azure Sentinel seamlessly integrates with Azure Advanced Threat Protection to analyze your users' behavior and prioritize which users you should investigate first, based on their alerts and suspicious activity patterns from Azure Sentinel and Microsoft 365. When selecting a user, you can view a clear, efficient, and convenient timeline that surfaces the alerts and activities associated with the selected user. Of course, the threat investigation doesn't have to be a reactive type of activity. You can take more proactive measures to preempt threats too. In our hunting page, you can find pre-built queries crafted by Microsoft security experts to start hunting for new anomalies and security threats across your organization logs. Azure Sentinel also integrates with Azure Notebooks, which is based on the popular Jupyter Notebooks, which allows you to automate common investigative steps, such as gathering additional information around process creation events. You can also query Azure Sentinel data about users, machines, IPs, or any other entities, and enrich it with other services to visualize the results. Finally, you can also use Azure Sentinel Community, where you can share and consume content for Azure Sentinel. Content can be dashboards, detection rules, hunting queries, playbooks, and much more. So that was a quick overview of Azure Sentinel, our new cloud-native SIEM service with built-in AI for analytics that removes the cost and effort to achieve a central and focused near-real-time view of the active threats in your environment. It's a preview today, so try it for yourself, and you can learn more in the link shown. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so that was about the Azure Sentinel. Okay, please, I know for some of us that may be too much, but sometimes when you see visuals, it helps better aiding understanding. Azure Sentinel is actually no longer in preview, and don't forget, it's actually a solution. If there's anything you will take home from that video, is the fact that it delivers intelligent security analytics, and I'm sure you saw that from the graph, from that video that was being watched, and also threat intelligence across, the environment. So it does that solution of detection, visibility, which we can all see, and that's why you can see the graph, or should I say diagram here on the screen, where it does the work of collection, that's the data across the enterprise, detection of threats, using the threat intelligence, investigating what it has just detected, and rapid, response in terms of protection of your environment. So that's what this Azure Sentinel is about. And remember, I said that is the integration of two powerful solutions to become one single solution. And the two powerful solution is the CM, which is the Security Information Management, as well as SOAR, which is the Security Automated Response. So integrating both of them is what brings about just one solution, and that solution is referred to as the Azure Sentinel. So don't forget, so far so good, we're talking about securities, and we're looking at different tools, different solutions that could help us with security. If there's anything that could make Microsoft stand out from other products, or should I say Azure stand out from other products, is the fact that Microsoft invests so much in security. Okay, trying to protect, users, or should I say organizations, workload or resources in the cloud. So that's one thing that I would boldly say that makes Microsoft stand out, from other cloud providers. The fact that they're investing so much in security and helping secure customers' environment. So that's for Azure Sentinel. Let's move on. Let's talk about Key Vault. Okay. Now, what is Key Vault? Basically, this also has to do with security, and it has to do with protecting both our identity as well as our data in the cloud. Okay, we talked about identity earlier in the training, and we understand what data is. Don't worry, maybe in the course of this training, we could, talk about it once more. But the Azure Key Vault really helps us to safeguard cryptographic keys and secrets. When I say keys and secrets, in a layman English, I can refer to it as password. A password can be secrets, it could be certificates that can be, secrets as well. But the idea is it helps us to safeguard these cryptographic keys and secrets that our cloud application within our environment uses, or should I say cloud services uses. So in essence, the key vault is what streamlines, the key management process, and it will now enable you to maintain the control of those keys that you use to access any encrypted data. So when it comes to data, our data can be encrypted, whether our data is in transit or our data is secure. So we can encrypt data. We can encrypt this data. Now, the key vaults, the keys that we use to access all of this encrypted data, we can have a key vault, during the management process of those key. I don't know if you're able to understand with the way I have explained to us, or maybe I should put it this way. The Azure Key Vault basically helps us to protect the likes of our certificates. Now, the certificates would usually have private keys that are associated with them, right? And it helps us to also protect our secrets. And secrets can be passwords. Password can be in form of strings, connection string, all of these in the cloud. That's what it does. So whenever we store, let's say, our sensitive data and what have we, there's always that key that we use to access them, and that's the essence of the Azure Key Vault. Okay, it is designed to help us store, these secrets for our server application. That's the idea. Although not because not necessarily, how do I put it? The Azure Key Vault is not a storage environment the way we'll have what's it called, SQL database that stores data, or the way we have managed disk that we can store our stuff. That's not the idea. It doesn't store data, rather it helps protect keys and certificates. You know, or store, this thing when it comes to management of our secret as well as certificate and all. That's what this key vault does. So for key vault, it addresses some things listed on the screen: secret management, key management, certificate management, as well as storing secrets that is backed up by our hardware security modules. Now, those are the things that our Key Vault helps us to address. Security management in the sense that the Azure Key Vault can, securely store, you can have control access to tokens, you can have access to password, to certificate, to API keys, any other secret, whatever secret that is being used within your environment. For key management, Azure Key Vault also helps. It serves as key management solution in a way, such that it makes it easier for you to be able to create and control your encryption key. Those encryption key that you use to encrypt your data for security reasons. So maybe you have, for instance, you have, you know, uh, app services, and your app services is integrated. You can have it integrated directly with the Azure Key Vault. That way, you can use this Key Vault to decrypt secrets even without the knowledge of any encrypted key. That's the, like form of the idea of this Key Vault. We currently have certificate management, right? The Azure Key Vault, it also lets us to, easily provision, manage, and deploy certificates, whether it's SSL certificate or TLS certificate. These are digital certificate that is used for security purpose. We use it with our Azure for any internal connected resources. Then the lastly, as stated here on the screen, we use this Azure Key Vault to protect, our software. So whether we have the likes of FIPs or what have we, it's validates using the hardware security module. So those are the things that Azure Key Vault does. Again, I'm going to stress this: the Azure Key Vault is not intended as storage. Is not a SQL database. Okay, that's not the idea. It's just a solution on its own that does or address the following issue that we have here listed on the screen. And of course, the Azure Pivot also have its own best practices as well. So um, again, I'm not going to go deep dive. It's just to give us idea. We're talking about security, and we've mentioned, things so far, different tools that we can use as solutions, when it comes to security. We've talked about the Azure Security Center. We've talked about Azure Sentinel, and now we're looking at Key Vault. Next here is the dedicated hosts. Azure dedicated host. Now, when it comes to our VM that we know so well, usually a VM that we create that is, easy for us to create or we're familiar with, usually runs on shared hardware, which means if the VMs that I've deployed or you have deployed, usually it's shared. And what do I mean by shared? The underlying hardware is shared by different customers. Okay, that is, our workload that we put is usually shared. Now, there are some organization based on the peculiarity of their industry. Um, when I say industry, we have different sector: the education sector, the financial institution, and so on and so forth. So there's some organization based on peculiarity, probably even the government or whatever. Just depending on the type of organization, they require that they have their own VMs hosted on a dedicated device. What that means is it's not being shared at all with any customer. Okay, and that is what the Azure dedicated host is all about. To give us that physical servers that physical servers where customers can host their different VMs, and usually the servers is dedicated to just you or to just that organization, is no longer going to be shared. Okay, the capacity will not be shared with other customers, it will not be shared with anyone. That's the idea of what this dedicated host is about. Okay, it's going to be isolated, and like I mentioned, some organization, maybe for compliance reasons, just because of the nature of their work, would require that they do not share things with other customers. So that way they have their own dedicated servers. So you can have the Azure dedicated host to gain visibility or control over server infrastructure, and you can even determine the type of host maintenance that you want. And those are the benefits. Uh, being listed here on the screen. You have the hardware isolation of your server level. You have control over maintenance, which I mentioned to us a while ago, and you can align this with Azure Hybrid use benefits. Okay, so this that's when it comes to pricing. When it comes to um, the Azure pricing, you can use your Azure Hybrid use benefit to get a cheaper. I don't know if I should use the word cheaper or should I say lower costs rather. Okay, for this dedicated host. So instead of you, yes, you are going to be charged per dedicated host. You're going to be charged based on how many VMs that you deploy to it, and this host price will be based on the type of VM family that you have, whether you are using the B2 series or you're using the D series or you're using the A series or N series or F series, depending, or even depending on the region too. Those are what will determine your pricing. And if you already have a software licensing, or you want to align it with the hybrid use benefit, of course you will get a lower cost. That's the idea of this dedicated host. So it's also part of security as well. So if there's anything that you're going to take home from this, is the fact that your VMs are hosted in an environment that is just dedicated to you or peculiar to you, where you don't have shared environment with other customers, or you don't have shared resources with other customers. You don't have underlining hardware being shared by other customers. Sorry, please, I'm emphasizing on this shared. It's just for you to understand what dedicated Azure dedicated host is all about. Okay, so that's a part of what's it called? We just talked about the security tools and the different features. Now let's get on to security network connectivity. At the end of the slide, we'll do a lab. We'll do the talking first, and we'll do the lab afterwards. So let's move on to secure network connectivity. Don't worry, I'll take the questions after the learning. Here, secure network connectivity, we are going to be talking about different concepts and functionality. We'll talk about what defense in depth is, our network security group, the Azure firewall, as well as the Azure DDoS protection. That's what we'll be looking at in this particular lesson. Okay, so let's start with the defense in depth. When we say defense in depth, basically this is a strategy. Okay, and the strategy is just to slow down advance of an attack that gets unauthorized access to information. Okay, so yes, it's a layered approach, and you can see from the diagram here that there are different layers. Okay, yes, it's a layered approach because each layer would provide us a form of protection so that if any layer is breached, the subsequent one will protect it further. So the idea is attackers are usually after our data. Okay, so that's why there's a form of security just to protect this particular data. And why it's been called layered approach again is before they can get to this data, each of the layer is providing one form of security or the other. Okay, in case physical security is breached, we still have the identity and access layer as a form of security to prevent further exposure. If this is breached, we still have the perimeter in place. If this is breached, we have the network in place. If this is breached, we have the compute. So there's always that layer that helps, to control and mitigate the risk, or what's it called, the security risks to our organization. And that's what this is about. So in essence, the defense in depth includes all of these additional controls, all of these layered approach are controls. And again, me making emphasis, the design is just to mitigate the risk to our organization. In the event that a particular layer fails, others are there to protect. And that's what this defense in depth is all about. Now, let me start with physical security quickly. This physical security is has to do with just the physical building that we can see, and most of the time, this is the first line of defense. Okay, whereby we are able to control who gain access into the building, and Microsoft, because the data center is owned by Microsoft. Microsoft ensures that this physical premises, there's a limited access to the data center, and is only authorized to the personnel, authorized personnel. Okay, you and I, we cannot just walk down to Microsoft data center to, enter the building and all. It's really well secured. So that's the first layer. Okay, in should in case this particular physical data center or physical security is being breached, we have the next layer, which is the identity and access. Now in this particular layer, it gives us control, to infrastructure as well as chain control. This is where we have access granted only to those who need that access, and solutions within this part is the likes of MFA. That's the multi-factor authentication. Those are solutions. The SSO, re-auditing event and change. Those are solutions that one could use within the identity and access level. Now, the next is perimeter. Should in case our identity in terms of authentication and authorization, there's a breach and we're able to gain access. Of course, there's another layer that forms as protection. And this is the area within perimeter where we use the likes of DDoS protection. So there's usually a form of DDoS attack, which I think I'll still talk about in this lesson. And we can use not just the likes of firewall, you know, to identify and alert on any malicious attack against our network. So all of those are within the perimeter layer. Now let's take it further down. Let's assume, okay, the perimeter layer is being breached. We still have the network, layer to help with the security protection. And this is the part where we have the likes of NSG as a solution. It helps limit communication between resources, where you can deny communication. Usually by default, deny is always by default. So you can always allow what is required. You can restrict internet, inbound internet access, or even limit outbound access wherever it's appropriate. You can implement security connection to your on-premises network. So that is the layer does the security. So further down, we have the compute layer. And of course, this compute layer, when we hear compute, I'm sure our mind should go to the likes of VMs. Okay, so that is the layer where we secure access to our virtual machine, whether our virtual machine is on the cloud or is on premises. That way we are able to close out some ports. We implement, endpoint protection. Those are the solution we have for this layer, just to keep maybe our system either patch or we have a current, just to protect against malware. We can close out some ports that would not be able to have our environment being vulnerable. And drilling further down is the application. Now, for this particular application layer, it's just to ensure that all our applications are secure and they are free from security vulnerability. Now, this is because it stores sensitive application secret in a secure storage medium, and we can make a security, a design requirement for all these application development. And lastly, our data. Like I said, our attacker is always after the data. In most cases, anyway, no. So our data can be in the database. Our data can be stored in on a disk inside the VM. Our data can be on our what's it called, SaaS application. Our data can be within our Microsoft 365. It can be in our cloud storage. Our data can be anywhere, being provisioned anywhere. So that way we are storing and we are able to store and control access to data, just to ensure that it is properly secured. And this is the part where one even have regulatories in place that dictate the control of resources. So the idea here is, eventually what we are trying to protect is our data, and that's why we have all of these different approach. Okay, so that's what defense in depth is all about. So it actually uses a layered approach rather than us relying on just a single parameter. That's what this is all about. Now let's move on to shared responsibility or shared security. Now, this slide here basically is talking about a shared responsibility model, and this shared responsibility model usually identify which security task is being handled by who, which one is handled by the provider, this Microsoft in our case, and which one is handled by you as a customer. When I say you, I don't mean you in person, I meant organization, customer. The customer can even be you as a user. Okay, so but who takes what responsibility is what this is about. Remember the different offering. We have the on-premises. The on-premises is just like saying private cloud. Okay, when you think of private message, you can think private cloud. And of course, for on premises, you are responsible for everything because you're the one that built your data center. You have this workload. You take care of the management. Microsoft does not have any responsibility to share with you. It's solely on you, to take care of your environment. Now, if you have the ES offering, there's a shared responsibility, especially regarding security. That's our focus area now, between you as a customer and Microsoft. So basically, because you're leveraging on cloud and the public clouds specifically, and Microsoft is the one that takes care of the data center. For that reason, they get to be the one to manage this physical data center. Microsoft manages the physical network, within the data center. Microsoft manage the physical host. Now, for years, as a customer, you are the one to determine your operating system that you want to use, the network controls, the application putting or you're hosting, the identity and directory infrastructure within your environment, the account and access management for this your environment, the cloud endpoint, as well as data governance and right management. So you as a customer, you're responsible, for such thing. So we have those tasks that you are responsible for and the one that Microsoft is responsible for. Don't forget that EAS, the infrastructure as a service, is that are offering that allows system admins or IT admins to be able to take full responsibility of the underlying infrastructure. So that's why Microsoft, or should I say customer, has most responsibility to take. Now, PaaS, platform as a service, where you don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. Microsoft is the one that is responsible from the physical data center to the operating system, while customer is solely responsible for account and access management to the data governance and right management. Now there is now a shared responsibility between both Microsoft as well as the customer. So when it comes to network controls, Microsoft is not just leaving it entirely to the customer to say, you know what, you are in charge, whatever you do is on you. Now there's a shared responsibility. Microsoft takes care of, some of the network controls, just as you will be doing your home part. The same thing for the application, the same thing for the identity and directory infrastructure. Now, for SaaS, which is software as a service, don't forget SaaS. Here we have the likes of Microsoft 365, Office 365, Dynamics CRM. Those are different SaaS offerings. Example. Now, from the data center to the application is solely managed by Microsoft, and from the account and access management to data governance and right management is solely managed by the customer. Now, the shared responsibility here between Microsoft and the customer is the identity and directory infrastructure. Now, the idea of this shared security is, of course, security becomes a shared concern, usually between the cloud provider and the customer, and that's because um, the the responsibility is usually shared between these two, especially when they move to the cloud. Okay, and don't forget, the shared responsibility model is just to give clear, make responsibility of these different user, whether the hosting provider or customers, to be very clear. And again, it's usually when organization move their data to the cloud. Once they move the data to the cloud, some responsibility is being transferred to the cloud provider. And that's why for on-premises everything is customer. Okay, it's only when they get to move to the cloud that there is now that shared responsibility of who takes care of what. And we're able to see that, from this diagram here on the screen. So that's about this. In summary, ES requires the most management by cloud customer. For PaaS, basically it has to, we create an application quickly without managing the underlying infrastructure. Therefore, the cloud provider manages, this hardware operating system, and customer is responsible for the application and data. Just summarizing for us. And of course, for SaaS, it requires the least amount of management by our cloud customer, because the cloud provider, which is Microsoft in this case, takes the responsibility for managing everything, basically except the data, devices, account, and all. And that's why you can see that from the point of access management to data governance is solely done by Microsoft. And that's the shared security responsibility that we have. Moving on, let's talk about network security group, NSG. Now, for NSG, this is security model as well. And the idea of NSG is it helps us to, filter what's it called? Filter network traffic. So to say that's what NSG does. Whenever we implement NSG, what we're trying to do is we're trying to limit, communication, so to say. So it's that service that refines traffic from and to the Azure VNet. Okay, and the Azure NSG usually comprises of different security rules. In essence, it uses rules that users can either allow or deny. can allow traffic or deny traffic. That's the idea of this NSG. So we can always set inbound or outbound security rules, you know, for this our NSG. And of course, we can filter sources. We have the port. We are going to see that when we are doing lab. So in essence, we can use NSG to limit network traffic to a resource within our Azure virtual network. So that's what we use the NSG, which is the network security group, to do. If you remember when we were configuring the VM, and we're trying to specify ports, the inbound ports, whether we want to open the HTTP or HTTPS or RDP or SSH, those ports. So basically, that's like a network security group where we are able to filter traffic or limit network traffic, so to say. So and of course, with the network security group, most of the time you can associate this network security group multiple times. You can have the subnet or the network interface, or even have the association. And what do I mean? With subnet, you can assign network security group to a subnet, and that way you are able to create any a protected screened subnet. There's something we call the DMZ, okay, and we can use this NSG to restrict traffic flow to all the machines that reside within that same subnet. Okay, so for network interface, we can assign NSG to all our network interface, so that all the traffic that flow through this network interface is now controlled by the NSG rules. That's something we can do. And we can even create our, what's it called, network security group, you know, to we can associate it with subnet, or we can associate with network interface, as well as security rules. So those things around the security rules, and we're going to see that. I'll show that to us when we're doing our lab, so that we can understand clearly this network security group. Like I said, it utilizes rules as well, and the rules here is just to either allow traffic or deny traffic, and there are some things we usually specify. So we have the inbound rules and we have the outbound rules. The inbound rules, basically, these rules deny all inbound traffic except from our virtual network, as well as the Azure load balancer. And for our outbound rule, the rules allow outbound traffic to all internet and virtual networks. So that's for the inbound and outbound rule, and I'm going to show us that during our lab. Okay. Lastly, here it says override default rules with new with higher priority rules. And when it comes to priority, you can give priority based on the value. So the lower the number, the higher the priority. And don't worry, this will make more sense to us in the lab. I'm trying to push the lab towards the end, so that we're able to cover all the slides first of all. So we will definitely do the lab for network security group. Now let's talk about firewall, Azure firewall. Now, our firewall, which we can have firewall as a service, okay, is actually a cloud-based network security service. And the idea is that it protects our Azure virtual network resources. Okay, the Azure firewall usually will use the likes of maybe static IP address for our virtual network resources, and it will allow all the outside firewall to identify the traffic that is originating from our VNet. Okay, so that's the firewall, and this fire has features. Sometimes people say the firewall and NSG are similar and all of it. In a way, you can try to understand it to say, okay, yeah, they seem similar, but of course they're uniquely different, if I can use that one. Now, the firewall features has built-in high availability, just like we have listed here on the screen. So with the likes of maybe Azure, the load balancer and so things, we don't need it for firewall because there's nothing basically we need to configure with the load balancer. So we don't need the load balancer when we have Azure Firewall. Then another thing is availability zone. With Azure Firewall, we can always configure maybe doing our deployment to span multiple availability zone to increase more availability, and also listed here on the screen is unrestricted cloud scalability. So we can use our firewall, Azure Firewall specifically, we can actually scale up based on what we need, based on the requirement. So if we need to accommodate maybe a changing traffic flow, so that we don't have to budget for any peak period and all, yes, this is something that can be addressed within the Azure Firewall. We also have uses Azure Monitor Login. It's also part of the capability for our firewall. Now we have the Azure Application Gateway, and basically the gateway is it provides us with this firewall, but this time around for our web application. So we have the likes of WAF that gives us that centralized inbound protection for our web application. So that's basically what this Azure firewall is all about. And I don't know if we have any question for that. So if there's anything that we want to take home is the fact that yes, the firewall is a cloud-based network security service, and it protects all our resources on the virtual network from attacker. Don't forget we're talking about security. Okay, so that's basically what this Azure firewall does. Okay, so next here is the Azure Distributed Denial of Service Protection, DDoS. Okay, so before I talk about what's it called? Before I talk about DDoS protection, I think there's a need for us to understand DDoS itself. Okay, now for DDoS, we have let me bring up my my whiteboard. I may need to just quickly demonstrate something to us. 1 minute, please. Let me see if I can bring up whiteboard. Okay, someone's hand is up. Please go ahead and ask your question while I try to bring up the whiteboard. So please go ahead to ask your question, please. Okay. Hey. All right. So trying to use what's it called? The whiteboard to illustrate something to us quickly. So I was talking about what's it called? DDoS, right? And I mentioned to us, I said the DDoS um, protection. Before we talk about that, there's a need for us to even understand what DDoS itself means, the denial of service attack. So basically, there used to be an attacker. Let me represent this for an attacker. Uh-oh. Sorry, this is an attacker. Just using this to represent an attacker. Now, this attacker basically uses there's a control server. Okay, and this control server, it uses botnets or bots. So let me represent this way. So this is a botnet, I'm trying to describe, what DDoS attack itself is before I now talk about the protection. So there could be tons of them like that. Now the idea of this is just to use all of this botnet, you know, to frustrate, if I can use that word, a particular enterprise server or an organization server. So this is the target server, or should I call it's an organization server basically. I'll call it target server. Now, this server is owned by an organization. Target server. Please don't mind my free handwriting. So this target server basically is owned by an organization, okay? And this attack, it will use the idea is to hijack this server. So it's going to use different bots or botnets. I'll just call this botnets. Okay, to send what's it called, it should perform various what's it called,
Oh, good morning.
service.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning, I can hear you.
Please, I can't. Are you trying to show us anything because I can't view anything
Yes,
else
I'm
now?
actually sharing my screen.
I can't see the screen now. I just saw a white spot.
And I'm illustrating something on the whiteboard. Can you see that, please?
I thought
Wow. Please, can someone else
as
confirm?
I
It
only saw
says
a plain.
You said what?
whiteboarding in
I'm,
whiteboarding in
It's,
progress.
I'm actually illustrating something on the
Yeah,
whiteboard. Are
I
you
can
able
I
to
can
see?
see
I
your
always
drawing.
You can see my
Drawing
drawing,
has
me
right?
yes.
I can only see a whiteboard. Oh.
So please, could you log out and rejoin again, please? Because I'm using the whiteboard to illustrate. So what I was trying to illustrate is the DDoS attack, so that from the explanation of the attack, you can understand the DDoS protection. Because the attacker, that's why I'm using this stick drawing to represent our attacker. That our attacker usually would send, or they would launch commands, to a botnet. Now they uses a particular control server. This represent the control server. Let me call this control server. So the attacker here would launch a botnet using the control server, such that the botnet could be thousands of infected hosts. It depends. Very, it's so much, and they are all infected. You know, let me do XX here so that you understand that they're all infected. Servers basically. The idea is the bot will send this attack traffic to our target server. Don't forget, the target here is usually the victim. Any organization that is being, let me call it victim target server. Okay. Such that the legitimate user that is trying to access, it prevents the legitimate user that is trying to access the server itself. The essence of DDoS, what's it called, attack is just to overwhelm that server, making it unavailable, to respond to legitimate requests. Let's assume you and I work in the same organization, right? And in our organization, we have our own server, okay? And of course, one of us is trying to access our server. But what the attacker will do is it will use botnet, to send attack traffic to our server, such that I will not be able to access the server, because I will see it that it's busy, is in use, it's been over. It will respond to me basically, and you would think, oh, so many people are trying to access the server at the same time, and that's why it's unavailable, not knowing that it's actually a form of DDoS attack. So the botnet basically is just to compromise the computer. Okay, and our botnet can be made up of Internet of Things devices. Okay, such that this attacker, or can I call them malicious hackers, they can get a poorly you know anything whatsoever, whether it's security cameras or digital video recorder, or I'm sure we all watch movies and we see from these movies in terms of security and services and all, when they're trying to access a particular system. So the DDoS, in summary, is just the collection of attack types that is aimed at disrupting, the availability of service. It doesn't make the service available to legitimate user. It frustrates it. That's why I use the word frustration. But I think the right word I should use is disrupt. It disrupts the availability of the service. That's what this DDoS attack is all about. Now, from that, what's it called? Simple explanation. Now, I think I can now talk about the distributed denial of service. Okay, so for distributed denial of service protection, basically when the DDoS attack has overwhelmed, or maybe it has exhausted, this particular service, our DDoS protection will now how will I put it? It's what protects, our environment from DDoS attack. Okay, so usually we have there's this most popular DDoS service attack that we have. Sometimes it can be a voluntary attack whereby it floods the network with, things that looks like a legitimate traffic, but of course it's not legitimate. It's just to overwhelm the available bandwidth that we have, such that authorized users do not have access to it. Sometimes it could come in form of a protocol attack. That is, it will render a target inaccessible by exhausting the server resources, just like what I was trying to describe using the whiteboard. It will give us like a false protocol request, that brings about weaknesses to maybe the network layer or the transport layer protocol. And finally, another type of attack is based on, I could call it application layer attack, or I can call it resource layer attack. It's going to target your web application that you have, just to disrupt the transmission of data between. Also, basically these are the most common DDoS attack that we can have. And with Azure DDoS protection, is a solution that helps protect our application as well as servers from this DDoS attack. It will analyze the network traffic, and it will discard anything that may look like DDoS attack. All those botnet command is going to try to analyze it, detect it, and of course discard all those things that look like it. Now, our Azure DDoS protection, basically you can scale. It uses this scale and elasticity, of our what's it called, the Microsoft Global Network. Okay, and we can always the idea of the scaling is just to meet our demand. And of course, we have two different tiers. We have the basic service tier, and we have this standard service tier. Those are the two tiers we have when it comes to the Azure DDoS protection. Now, for the basic tier, this is enabled for by default. It does not require any extra cost. It's part of the Azure platform. And we have the always on traffic that is always monitoring in real time, such that it gives this real time mitigation of any of these network layer attack, and providing defense to our Microsoft online services that we are using. So the basic is by default. Of course, it has its own limitation in the sense that the standard will do what the basic does, and even more. With the standard service tier, it will provide us extra mitigation capabilities, those things that are basic cannot cover, and the standard will definitely do more. Now this standard, you can have it enable, and it requires no application changes. Basically, we have the likes of protection policy can be tuned through our dedicated traffic monitoring, as well as it can use the machine learning algorithm. We can have policies that are applied to our public IP address that can be associated to resources that is being deployed within our virtual network, maybe our load balancer, for instance, or our application gateway. We have the DDS protection does that. So those are the two tiers that we have, and basically it does that. So for I could give us a scenario. I've worked with an organization before where thank God we have this DDoS protection in place. So what the issue was is that the DDoS protection detected an attack from a particular public IP address, and immediately, because we have the always on, it mitigated the issue. Now, the observation was that there's this IP address that seems irregular from the other IP address. So that was the attack that was detected. Don't forget that the attack is usually a botnet, botnet command that sends traffic to overwhelm a particular server. So when you're seeing the same, request, or the same traffic from a particular IP address that is odd from your, the IP address of your environment, of course, it's able to quickly identify that. And because the protection is there, it's mitigated the issue automatically. Okay, so that malicious IP was able to be discarded and all. And of course, you can do further monitoring and also uh, comply to the best practices or recommendation that it gives to us, just to make the environment more secure. That's the Azure Distributed Denial of Service Protection. Okay, I think that's all for today. So far so good. These are the security that we talked about. We talked about the Azure Security Center. We talked about Azure Key Vault, Sentinel, dedicated host, defense in depth, DDoS protection. I don't know if we have any question, please. Any question before I spend the remainder 15 minutes to take us through the lab? Any question? Please, this is question time. Any question? I know I've been talking for a while. This is the time where you can ask your questions. If there's anything that you would like me to, rephrase, or you want to gain more clarity, or probably you just want to contribute to the learning, please feel free to ask question. Okay. All right. So I'll take the silence as no question for now, and that would just take me to do practicing some labs with us. So 1 minute, let me bring up my lab environment. Okay, so go back home. For Azure Security Center, I can go ahead from my search bar. You will see Security Center. So we can navigate to our Azure Security Center from our Azure portal. That's what I'm trying to let us know from here. And of course, for you to be able to use this Azure Security Center, one thing is important: you must have subscription to Microsoft Azure. If you don't have, of course, either sign up for free, or you just have to have a subscription. And also, it's because that subscription is what will help us to be able to enable the Azure Defender that we have. So this is basically the overview. You would see here insights, secure score. I have just one Azure subscription, access resources 13, active recommendation that I haven't done, security alert, which is not in place. Of course, this is a test environment for me. So again, there's a need for us to always enable the Azure Defender. Right now, I don't have mine enabled. So the reason for that is based on costs. Because I left my VM on from last week till date, I think I have seen my remaining credit, $46. So after this training, trust me, I am going to go ahead to delete all the VMs created and any other resources I have on because it's a test environment and of course it's taking out my money. So I'll go ahead, and that's why most of these things I don't have them on. But what I'm trying to let us know is part of the prerequisite. Beside having subscription, there's a need for you to enable the Azure Defender. Okay, because with the Azure Defender, it will help, protect. We have the Azure Defender is what helps protect maybe our endpoint or identity or even the cloud hub security. So there's a need for us to have this Azure Defender in place. Now let's try and explore. So for get started, we can see we have the cloud security posture management, the cloud workload protection for machine, Azure advanced protection for pass. So that's what whenever we enable the Azure Defender on our subscription, these are the things that we get. And of course, remember I said we can get a recommendation. It's going to give us recommendation of those things that we need to do. So in terms of health, it's letting me know that all of these are not healthy. Okay. Now the color indicates, the ones that are being healthy. Let me click on this. Batch machine should encrypt time this, catch, and all of this. So severity is high. So it's giving me a recommendation. Let me see, remediation step to enable disk encryption on your VM. Follow this. So it's letting me know that there's a need for me to enable disk encryption for my VMs, and it's showing me the affected VMs. Textiles VMs, Textiles 4 VM. No, those VMs that we created last week, basically. Those are the ones that are on LD and they are at risk. But I'll definitely delete all of this because it's even incurring charges on me. But for purpose of this learning, those those are the recommendation that we get to see. So imagine each of these see log analytic areas should be installed on the Azure VM. It's just giving me those things, those actions that I need to take to help secure more my environment. So this is peculiar to VM. You see the one of network, the Azure Defender, and so on and so forth. That needs to be done. So it would always provide to us recommendations of those things we need to do. Now, security alerts, which I basically do not have in place, you can have your configure security alerts, for this particular changes. So it's something that you can do within your environment. We have inventory. Let me open the inventory page. We can see that. Okay. Not installed. In terms of monitoring agent, is not installed for this VM being listed, and you will always find a recommendation for each of these services. You have the workbooks. We're just exploring basically and how. So I'll move quickly to something called Secure Score. Now, our Azure Secure Score helps us to understand the what's called the our environment. Okay, so the Azure Secure Score is part of our what's it called security sense center, and it does a form of continuous access to our resources. Okay, it aggregates all the findings that it gets within our environment into just one single score so that we can quickly see the current state of our environment. Okay, here it's saying that it's not available basically. Let me see what happens if I click view recommendation. You can see that it will always bring me to this recommendation here. So the secure score, basically the lower the identified, the higher the score, basically the lower it identify risk level, and the secure score, just like we can see from the Azure portal, will present to us, it will give us the recommendation that we can take that will help remediate a specific issue within our environment. Okay, so the idea is all controls are, just giving us opportunity to add in any of our attack surface, and Microsoft would go ahead to map these controls to various category, from identity to the app to data, device, as well as even infrastructure. And depending on the security value of this control, it will usually assign point to it. So that's what this secure score is all about. So there's a way it's been calculated, and right now what you can see on the screen, my environment is not secure at all in any way. So that's just to give us an idea. Let's go to Azure Defender. Okay, so I still need to enable this such that we can see the Azure Defender. Let me enable. Okay, so it's bringing me here to go ahead and upload. Trust me, I don't think I want to do that because of cost, but this is just us trying to explore the environment. Now, another thing that we talked about is the what's it called? Key votes. For key votes, so how do we go about it? We can type key votes in this search bar, and it takes us to the key vault environment. So I already have two key vaults here, but we can easily create a key vault. Now to create a key vault, we can click on the create button, and it brings us the page. Don't forget you need to have a subscription to be able to use key vault. So select the subscription resource group. I'll maintain the same rather than creating, I think I just want to create the text stylus resource group. Okay, thank Textiles Research Group. Then I need to give the key vault a name. So I'll just call it Textiles Key Vault. No, there's not supposed to be a space. Now the region, we need to specify region. So because I can maintain this region or choose any region. Don't forget the region is basically whether it's the region closest to you or where you have your customer depending. So I'll maintain the default region, which is East US. Then the pricing tier. Do I want to choose standard or I want to use premium? Now, when you use the premium, it's usually supported for the HSM backed keys that we talked about. But I just, excuse me, maintain standard, so to say. Now, once this is done, we're not making changes here. Soft delete is enabled such that if you delete, it can be recovered. Okay, temporarily is more or less like temporary deletion. You can recover what has been deleted. And days to retain deleted keys, you can modify that here. Maybe your soft delete, your temporary deletion, within which period, in case you want to recover it. Do you want it within 30 days or 60 days or 90 days? You can see that 90 is default here, but you can modify these changes to say, okay, whatever I delete, I want to still be able to recover it within this number of days. So you can have that specified here. Now for the purge protection, it's disabled by default. whereby it allows your key vault and object to be purged usually during retention. So leave it. I'm leaving it disabled. If you enable it, that means you're enforcing a mandatory retention period for any deleted key vault and object. So I'll leave it in here. Then I'll go ahead, because of our time, I'll just click review and create. Basically, this is the basic thing. So I'll go ahead, review and review. For everything that we try to configure and deploy, it will always run validation. If validation pass, then of course we are in good hands. If it fails, then that means there's an issue. So we'll go ahead to click create. It's to create a key vault. So that's all done. You can click on the notification or the notification icon to tell us the status. Of course, you can see that the deployment is in progress. Okay, while the deployment is in progress, please, if you have any question whatsoever, I don't mind, please feel free to ask a question. Can drop it in the meeting chat if you don't want to unmute your mic. And no, just please feel free to ask question.
I to say.
Yes, please.
I to say.
I can hear you. Please go ahead.
I to say. I to say. I to say. Good morning.
Good morning. I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead.
I saw you. Is that you?
Please go ahead. I can hear
I
you.
was trying to raise my hand. I was trying to raise my hand at that time, but maybe my hand. Okay. You talked about Azure firewall.
Yes, please.
Can you hear me? You talked about
Yes.
Azure firewall.
Yes, I can hear
I
you.
want to ask, is Azure firewall like other firewalls for on premises?
Okay, so
or are
go
there
ahead.
types of Azure, or are there type of
Okay, so the way you have your firewall that you can use on premises, the same way we have firewall that can be used in the cloud for protection. And the idea is to, we use firewall on our on premises, native or traditional on premises to protect our network. Okay, the same thing we can deploy the Azure firewall on our virtual network for our cloud protection. And the idea is to protect all our resources that we have on VNet, that's the virtual network, from attackers. Any attacker that is trying to take advantage of, vulnerability and all, we have that firewall in place for us. So with the firewall, we can always set rules, okay, that will help us to block any attackers, from just the way we have on our own premises, the same way we have for the cloud. I don't know if that's simple enough for us to be able to understand. Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't hearing Aderoju's response. So, but in a way, we configure firewall. Most of the time, Azure firewall is always, it blocks all traffic by default. Unless you decide to enable it and have rules in place. By default, our firewall blocks all traffic. That's the way it works. And it's whenever you're using firewall, just to go a little bit further, it's usually recommended that one uses a hub spoke network topology type. When we say hub basically is a form of virtual network within our Azure. That hub for us will act like a central point of connectivity to our on-premises network. And the spoke in essence is that virtual network that we can pair with our hub. That is, we can pair with our on-premises and network. So we can use it, this spoke, to isolate workflow, so to say. That way we can have traffic flowing between maybe the on-premises data center, and maybe using the likes of the express route, or maybe even a VPN gateway connection. That's a kind of topology that one can use to can have when implementing an Azure firewall. But in essence, I'm just trying to say that the Azure firewall protects our Azure virtual network resources in a simple word. And I don't know if I'm able to answer your question that way. Okay, so our virtual network has been deployed. I know it's time, but just give me few minutes to just explore these key vaults. So I'm sorry, I said firewall, key vault rather. So this is our key vault that we've successfully created. And remember I said we have keys. So with key vault, we can use it to manage keys, where we can either generate or import keys. Of course, there are no keys here. We can have secrets, where we can generate or import secrets. We have certificate, and we can create access policy. We have the networking security and all. Because of our time, I won't be able to complete this lab, but definitely next week we can always go through this together. Okay, so thank you all for your time, and don't forget all of these lab exercises is within our channel. If you go to the channel files, you would see the step-by-step guide to create each of these resources that we've talked about so far. So good for this learning. So once again, any question or any contribution before I call it a day? Okay, so in the absence of no question, thank you all for your time. We will continue next week. Next week, I'll just conclude on the maybe key vault, as well as show us, the network security group, since I wasn't opportune to quickly take us through that because of time. So I'm saying next week we'll do complete the walkthrough for Key Vault, and we'll also talk about the security group. Then we can move on to talk about what's it called, identity, governance, and privacy. That's what we'll focus on next week. So thank you for your time, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very grateful.
Thank you all for your time.